What was the toughest question you got at lunch?
Well, somebody asked me who my favorite comedian was of all time, and I could think of a lot of them I liked, but I didn't want to pick a
You
single.
didn't have. What are your top three?
Well, I came up with Billy Crystal. I saw him do a performance once, but you know, I go back to the days of Jack Benny and some of those, so I could come up with names you've never heard of.
A lot of people are looking back on those days of Jack Benny and they're thinking, where did they go? Especially this week when you get news like U.S. is no longer the richest middle class in the world. Now it's Canada holding that position. How troubling is that?
Well, I read that story, and I don't know exactly how it was measured, but all I know is that our GDP per capita, you know, is at what, 52,000 or something, 51 or 52,000. We are a very, very, very rich country, and it's gone up in my lifetime, one person's lifetime, 6 for 1 in real terms, not inflation, just real terms. So if you imagine my father and mother, you know, in the waiting room in 1930 and thinking their little boy would see something that was going to be 6 times per person output in the country, it's a remarkable country. And it's not over yet. I mean, this country will be doing better 10 and 20 and 30 years from now than it is now.
If the middle class were to continue losing ground, though, as by this measure, they have lost a significant amount of ground, can that thesis really hold, that you're bullish on America forever?
Yeah, it's not a good thing. I mean, the Forbes 400 this past year had an aggregate net worth of $2 trillion and 20 billion. That's an all-time record by some margin. In 1982, the first year I believe it was the first year they did it, it was like 90 billion. So it's up 21 or 22 times for one since 1982. That has not been true of the middle class. So it is really true that particularly the ultra-rich have gotten far, far wealthier, and more of the national pie has moved to them and away from the middle class.
What do you see as the #1 driver of that trend, of the acceleration of inequality and the disparity between the top and the bottom?
I think it's actually a natural consequence of a market system over time that gets more and more specialized. And the market system is wonderful. I mean, it will produce goods and services like nothing else, and it'll produce what people want. It encourages people to go into the right jobs and all that sort of thing. So you don't want to fool around too much with a market system. It has produced a bountiful America, but it will more and more leave behind the people whose skills aren't well adapted to a market system.
Let's talk about what Americans are seeing now. You have the stock market near all-time highs, but on the flip side of things, most investors, the average investors, have their lowest amount of trust in stocks ever.
Yeah, well, they're wrong.
You think they're wrong?
Well, trust in stocks is trust in American business. I mean, that's all stocks are, as a part of American business. And American business has done very, very well for people for a long, long time. Now, there's lots of interruptions, and there can be market panics, and there can be all kinds of things. But business will keep turning out more and more goods, and they'll be earning more and more money over time. And the people that own American business are going to do well over time. I don't have the faintest idea what's going to happen next year or 2 years from now or next week or next month, but I do know that 10 years from now and 20 years from now and 30 years from now, the people that have owned stocks will have done well.
Do you think, though, that we could be at a tipping point here? If corporate America in this year doesn't make big investments, in some cases do some wage increases, and really think about growing and expanding their businesses, does that hurt the framework of this recovery?
Well, I think most businesses are thinking about it. I mean, every business is trying to sell more goods this year than last year, including all the ones Berkshire has. We spent $11 billion on plant and equipment last year, and we'll spend more this year. American business wants to do more business, and they're doing it. I mean, that's what's happened in the last 4 years, ever since the fall of 2009, year after year. Our railroad is carrying a lot more goods than it was 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. They're somebody else's goods, but we're moving them. So,
which is always a good sign for the economy and recovery and movement.
Oh, sure. Our economy is moving forward, and it's been moving forward ever since the fall of 2009. has not been galloping forward, but it has been moving forward at a perfectly decent clip.
Is there something that would get it galloping right now, today?
Well, that's what everybody wants, but I mean, sure, you can drop $1 million from the sky on every household, and they'll rush out and spend it, and money won't be worth much after that. But you can create demand various ways in the society. But the trouble is in economics, you always have to say, and then what? And there's a big and then what to pushing that forth, sort of stimulus forth.
You've been very vocal about the housing recovery. If I am a potential first-time home buyer in most of the markets in America, I've got a job, prices haven't increased so much in my community, do I buy a house this spring? What does Warren Buffett say?
Well, I say if you plan to live in the locale where you are for some time, I don't think you should buy with the idea of selling it a year later or 2 years later. If you plan to live in it for a significant period of time, by all means buy it. It was one of the best purchases I ever made, 56 years ago. I bought the house I'm living in today. Brought all kinds of happiness. Today you can buy it with very, very cheap money. I mean, you were getting a terrific deal on the mortgage now. So if I
How much longer, by the way, do you think that'll last?
I don't know. I wish if I knew that, I'd go out and speculate in Treasury futures. I'm no good at that sort of thing.
We also had a little fun with Warren Buffett, and we did a Real Biz rapid fire. Check it out. All right, I want you to have a swig of your Coca-Cola.
Good.
Because we're about to do a rapid fire Real Biz challenge. Are you ready?
Okay. Okay.
You've had your Coca-Cola,
Right.
You're ready to go. All right, are you an Apple or a Samsung man?
I'll show you my, this is my cell phone.
How do you tweet on that thing?
Alexander, it's falling apart as a matter of fact. No, Alexander Graham Bell gave me this.
With your
actually.
room key in the middle,
Yeah, right.
which is black, by the way,
Yeah.
so no one knows where you're actually
Yeah.
staying, which is good. Alexander Graham Bell gave you the phone. So how do you tweet?
I've had 5 tweets and another person did it for me.
Another person took care of it.
Yeah.
Have you ever bought anything on Amazon?
My assistant has bought for me. She bought quite a few books for me.
Books?
Yeah.
What was the last book you had her buy on Amazon?
I'm not sure I remember, but actually they were older books that I've already got in my library, but it's too much trouble to try and find them in my library, so I just buy another copy.
How many books are in your library?
Too many.
Which industry that we rely on today is going to be gone by the time our grandchildren grow up? For example, cars. Are they still going to rely on gas?
Over time, that will diminish dramatically.
What are we going to be surprised has barely changed 50 years from now?
Human nature. Yeah, people will be doing exactly the same foolish things they do now.
Are we ever going to see a Jetsons-like world? Food, pills, and jetpacks?
Not for me.
What's in your wallet right now?
I'd say about probably $400 or $500.
$400 or $500
Something like that,
in
yeah.
cash.
Yeah,
Is that what you're always carrying?
I generally carry something like that.
In
yeah.
20s or 50s or hundreds?
Well, I've got a few hundred.
I want to see. Let's see.
You want to see? Okay,
Yes,
sure.
I do.
Yeah, well, most women do. You're not unusual. What have I got? I've got 5 100s.
5 100s.
Yeah, and then some.
All right, a 10, a couple ones, a 5.
This is-
You're ready to tip and you're ready to dine out
sure.
and have a big night out on the town
Yeah,
tonight.
this is pretty standard.
Are we going to have cash in 5 years?
Yeah,
10?
sure.
20?
Yeah, yeah.
We're going to keep being a cash
We'll
society.
use cash.
How about credit
Well, no,
cards?
I don't. Well, we'll have loads of credit cards and everything else, and we'll have lots of systems of payment, but we'll have a lot of cash.
Who would you rather have lunch with at Piccolo's? We like Smith and Wollensky, but taking them back to Omaha, Piccolo's, you're going to have a root beer float and some prime rib with one of the two Marks, Mark Zuckerberg or Mark Cuban. Who is it?
Probably Mark Cuban, because I'd understand more of what he was saying.
What are you going to talk about with him?
Well, we'd talk basketball and probably gambling, a few things like that.
All right. Well, Warren Buffett, we really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Okay.